Welcome to the video. My name is Aleksi and on this channel I cover all things Azure. And today our journey with the Data Factory continues. And today I will cover 5 essential best practices that you should consider when building your Data Factory pipelines. Let's start with the one practice that I have been already talking about in my past videos, and that is naming conventions. When building data pipelines in Data Factory or in any other tool, it is always a good practice to think about clear naming conventions for your development work items. In the case of Data Factory, it would be ideal to have some naming conventions for objects like pipelines, datasets, linked services, and triggers, so that you can keep things organized. Importance of naming conventions is really highlighted when you have multiple people developing pipelines to the same Data Factory. So let's keep things neat and organized, and let's have some naming conventions. Next best practice that I want to cover is the retry functionality in activities. By default, activities have 0 retries defined, meaning that if the activity fails, it won't try to run itself again, and it will throw an error message and in many cases fail the entire pipeline run. However, by setting retries to activities, we can get rid of multiple unnecessary failures in the Data Factory that could be happening due to some minor downtime with Azure or some external services that the activity is using. In my opinion, it is a good practice to set at least a couple of retries to activities, and depending on the case, adjust the retry interval to something other than 30 seconds. Our next best practice is also related to activities, and it is the timeout setting. By default, most activities have 12-hour timeout limit, and actually this default used to be 7 days, so in some older environments you might have some activities with this 7-day timeout limit. This timeout setting is something that data engineers would need to consider when building their data pipelines, since I have seen cases where activities have gotten stuck and they have been just running until they have reached their timeout limit. So it is always good to think what would be the maximum amount of time that a set activity could be actually running and adjust the timeout setting accordingly. Next up, we have one of the most overlooked but one of the most important settings in the Data Factory, and that is pipeline concurrency setting. This setting allows you to specify how many times a given pipeline can be running at the same time. I have seen many terrible things happen in production environments with pipelines that didn't have this setting defined. By default, one pipeline could be running multiple times in parallel, and in many cases, this is the situation that we don't want to happen. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, like some generally used pipelines that are being used as sub-pipelines in many top-level pipelines. But as a good rule of thumb, in most cases you want this setting to be 1. And by setting it to 1, if an older run of the same pipeline is still running, when a new run is triggered, that pipeline will wait until the older run has been completed and start running directly after that. So next time when you fire up the Data Factory and start building new pipelines, really pay attention to this concurrency setting. Our 5th best practice is that you should utilize iterative logic when building your Data Factory pipelines. I'm not going to cover this topic in great detail in this video, since I have already made an in-depth video on this topic. So feel free to check that one out if you're not familiar with iterative pipelines in Data Factory. And that's all for today's video. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Azure and Data Factory content. And let me know in the comment section if you would like to see a part 2 for this video. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.